Hi, this is Molly.
And Cody,
the host of Over the Fence True Crime Podcast.
Please join us as we talk about true crime in the most normal place in the world.
Over the fence.
To be specific, over our backyard fence. We're both moms of humans and of dogs. We live directly next door to each other and share many conversations about life and family, but mostly true crime over our backyard fence.
And we invite you to come learn more about true crime and, well, us. We give a lot of attention to California true crime, but have ventured throughout the U.S. and even across the pond and plan to continue our world domination in the near future.
Listen to us wherever you listen to your podcasts, or give us a follow on Instagram at overthefence_podcast. So grab a drink and talk with us.
Over the Fence.
Darkcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
Before we begin this week's episode, I'd like to start with a content warning. This podcast includes foul language and includes discussions of violent crimes. Some topics may be triggering and may include depictions of sexual assault, gore, torture, suicidal ideation, or discussions of mental health. Listener discretion is strongly advised.
Today, Courtney and I will dive into a missing persons case that has gone unsolved for over 30 years.
It's a case that boggles everyone's mind, that's for sure. And we do have a guest joining us for this episode to discuss possible theories as to what may have happened to her.
Yep, we will have JT from several podcasts, and he will join in on our discussion on this 30-year-old case. With that, I'm Amanda Cronin.
And I'm Courtney Fenner. And A Nefarious Nightmare presents Tire Marks and Striped Fabric. Where is Tara Calico? All right, so welcome, everybody, to A Nefarious Nightmare podcast. Today, as we said in our intro, we do have a guest. His name is JT, and he is from many podcasts, including Brew Crime and Crime Trials, and he's here to dive into this with us. So welcome, JT.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yes,
Yay.
I do indeed have a series of shows. I'm surprised the world hasn't imploded.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us on this episode. It's a very important one. Mm-hmm. We're trying to, kind of like everybody else, just figure out what the hell happened to Tara.
Yeah.
And it's just insane. But before we dive into this, go into a little bit, let's just tell everybody about yourself. Tell everybody about your shows.
Hi, everybody. I'm JT, and it's been 2 hours since I last did anything podcasting. That's not what you wanted. Okay. I live on the East Coast. I love anything podcasting and true crime and or anything else. I do co-host Brew Crime, where we talk about brews and crime. Ooh, it's mind-blowing idea. And I voice crime trials, where we take the crime from the beginning of it until the end of the trial. And there's a lot of sound bites, etc., thrown in there. It's fantastic. It's written by a very talented writer. Yes. And then I also voice Active Shooter, and I co-host True Crime and Wine Time. So every single show I have makes me want to drink.
Me too.
That's where we are.
Well, I don't really drink much, but I have listened to Brew Crime, and it's a great show. I say I don't drink much. I haven't had a drink in fucking 4 or 5 years now.
Yes, you're going for straight up Popehood. That's what you're. I mean, the hat would look good, I suppose.
Maybe. But I have listened to a lot of crime trials, and I love that show. That's a good show. Am not.
It's really well written.
Yes, very, very much so. And the guy that does the voice, he's all right.
Thank God this is an audio format, because you'd see me blush a little bit. I'll take all right. It's better than some of the things I've been told. So.
All right. No. So, and JT and I have toyed with an idea for another podcast at some point. It's just a toying little idea, but, we won't get into that right now. It may or may not happen. I don't fucking know. But yeah, that's it.
I do 2. You can do 2.
Girl.
Yeah, you can do 4. You can do 10.
You can do...
I write for more shows. I can give you those.
That sounded like you were beginning that one song that you hear on TikTok all the time. I could be brown, I could be brutal, or whatever.
Yeah. I love that song.
You can do 4, you can do 2, you can do 376. You can do... No.
It's true.
You're onto something.
At that point, you might be breaking even. Like,
exactly.
All right. So that is JT, and you guys know who we are. And let's go ahead and dive on into the case of Tara Calico. Tara Lee Calico was born February 28, 1969 in Belen, New Mexico to parents Patty Dole and David Calico. She was noted as being extremely outgoing, a jokester, and very active and athletic. Also noted as being a very busy and ambitious person. She was a sophomore at the University of New Mexico Valencia campus.
Tara had always been known as someone with big goals and lots of energy. During high school, she was in a band, ski club, played tennis, and was even in the high school marching band for at least a year doing flag corps. She was super close to her family. Her mother, like her daughter, was also ambitious and determined and kept a strict and very full schedule.
She's described as 5'7", 120 pounds, Caucasian, with brown hair and a cowlick, green eyes, a large scar on the back of her right shoulder, brown birthmark on the back of one leg, and a large scar on her calf.
Tara had this thing where she loved bike riding, even did so with her mom. She and her mom were really close. Her mom knew that Tara was pretty adamant about being timely and also communicating when she would be somewhere or letting people know if she wasn't going to arrive.
Around 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday, September 20th, 1988, Tara left to go on her daily bike ride along State Road 47 near Belen, New Mexico. NM 47 is a 60-mile-long state highway that runs through the counties of Bernalillo, Socorro, and Valencia. She used that route on the Valencia County side nearly every morning and was even accompanied by her mother, Patty Dole, on many occasions. At one point, Patty felt that they were being stalked by someone driving, and the most recent incident was that of a car aggressively driving close to her and deliberately passing her many times. So, she panicked and stopped riding and even warned Tara to carry some form of protection like mace with her. But Tara, unfortunately, and noted to also have been cheerful about this, decided against that.
That morning, though, she advised her mom, basically in a joking manner, saying, "Hey, don't worry, I'll be fine. Don't worry about me. But if I'm not home by noon, please come and pick me up. I have plans to play tennis with my boyfriend at 12:30. Again, Tara isn't known for missing a date or being late to anything, so when her daughter did not return, Patty went searching for her along her usual bike route. She couldn't find her or any sign of her, so she then contacted the police.
Several pieces of Tara's Sony Walkman, as well as a cassette tape, were later discovered along the road. Tara's mother believed that she might have dropped them in an effort to mark her trail. Several people claimed to have witnessed Tara riding her bicycle, which has never been found. Nobody had witnessed her presumed abduction, although several people noticed a light-colored pickup truck, possibly a 1953 Ford, with a camper shell following closely behind her. So my first question is, would this possibly be the same aggressive driver that Tara's mom dealt with? I've noticed in several other cases that people do indeed confuse cars with trucks, so it's not out of the realm of possibility.
In July 1989, about 10 months after Tara goes missing, a chilling Polaroid photo of an unidentified young woman and boy, gagged and seemed to have been bound, was televised to the public after it was discovered in a convenience store parking lot in Port St. Joe, Florida, which totally veering off way of New Mexico State 47 here. A woman who found the photo called the police, noting that there was a white male in his 30s with a mustache who was the driver of a white Toyota van, which was parked in the spot before they got there.
The police did stage a roadblock in an attempt to intercept this van, but was unfortunately unsuccessful. Friends of Tara's family thought that the woman in the photo looked strikingly similar to Tara and contacted her mother, who then met with investigators so that together they can examine this Polaroid.
Patty at first wasn't sure if it was Tara, but the more she looked at the photo, the more sure she became. She believed it was her daughter after taking the quote-unquote time, growth, and lack of makeup into consideration, and noted that a discolored streak scar on the woman's leg was identical to the one that Tara had gotten due to a car accident she was in when she was younger. In the missing person report, the scar is noted. There was also a dog-eared paperback next to her. V.C. Andrews was one of Tara's favorite authors.
Also in the photo was an unidentified boy, which was believed to have been 9-year-old Michael Henley, who went missing while on a hunting trip with his dad in April of 1988. Scotland Yard had analyzed the photo and came up with the conclusion that it was indeed Tara, but another analysis by the Los Alamos National Laboratory disagreed. An FBI analysis of the photo has been deemed inconclusive.
Michael Henley's remains were found 7 miles from the campsite he had disappeared from in the Missouri mountains. He actually had died from exposure way before this Polaroid could have even been developed.
Tara's case has received a ton of coverage on popular television programs such as A Current Affair, which was popular in the 80s, as well as Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. It's also been profiled and discussed on Oprah and 48 Hours. It's 2022, and the case remains unsolved even to this day. There was a task force created in 2013, though, to reinvestigate her disappearance.
The family did end up moving to Florida in 2003, a move they had planned for a while but decided against due to hope of her being found or a big case break. But in 2008, Sheriff Rene Rivera of Valencia County came forward and said that he knew what happened to Tara and who did it. He didn't name the suspects, but said it was 2 teenagers at the time of the disappearance. He also noted that there was some kind of accident and in a panic they had disposed of her body. However, no remains were found and he could not make an arrest.
This pissed Tara's stepdad, John Dole, off. He said that there have been many claims of circumstantial evidence that led to convictions over the years. Why not this one? Why would the sheriff publicly announce his suspicions if no arrest has even been made?
There were 2 other Polaroid photos that surfaced that could have been Tara. One was a blurry photo of a girl's face with tape covering her mouth, found near a residence construction site in Montecito, California. Her mom said she recognized the striped fabric behind her and felt it could very well have been Tara. Forensic evidence suggests it was taken sometime after May of 1989.
The second one was of a woman bound loosely with her eyes covered, sitting next to an unknown man on an Amtrak train, dated roughly to February of 1990. Now, I saw this photo, and while the mom felt that this may have been just a really bad prank or sick joke or something, that it was definitely not Tara. And whether it was or not, there is something about that man that really scared the shit out of me. Unfortunately, no arrest has been made from either photo. Let's take a quick break right here.
California has the largest population in the United States and the site of some of the most famous true crime cases in history. But there's more than meets the eye to the crime in California. Join Sean, Jessica, and Charles on the California True Crime Podcast as they cover crime both infamous and overlooked from around our state, while looking at the deeper history that goes beyond beaches and movie stars.
Welcome back. In 2017, an article reads that Melinda Escobel, who was a classmate of Tara's, believes she knows what happened to her. Melinda is a filmmaker and has been working on a documentary on Tara. Melinda says that during her bike ride, it appeared she had had some trouble along the way, that she seemed to have been harassed by a group of men in an older vehicle following her.
Melinda also said that witnesses noticed 2 vehicles in total that seemed to have been harassing Tara. Both vehicles were primer gray. One was a Chevy International and the other was a mid-50s Ford pickup.
Witnesses said several people inside the vehicles harassed Tara after she had pulled her bike over. There were guys hanging out of the pickup truck, tugging and grabbing at her. Witnesses assumed that this was some kind of fun or horseplay, or maybe it was Tara's dad or some friends helping her as she had pedaled away. No one felt it was necessary to call the police.
Along her route were pieces of her Walkman, tire tracks, and bicycle tracks consistent with her pink Huffy bike, and a marijuana pipe found nearby. Miranda believes that someone had connections with the Valencia County Sheriff's Office and that a cover-up may have occurred.
The latest developments: on October 1st of 2019, the FBI announced that they are offering a reward for up to $20,000 for precise details leading to the identification or location of Tara Lee Calico, and information leading to an arrest and conviction of those responsible for her disappearance.
A man by the name of Henry Brown made a deathbed confession to police in 2013. He said that shortly after her disappearance, he had been in the basement of a man named Lawrence Romero Jr. While he was there, he noticed what looked like a young woman's body, wrapped in a blue tarp and buried in a makeshift grave.
Lawrence Romero, along with a man named Dave Silva and another unknown male with red hair, told Henry that the body was Tara's. They said on that day of her disappearance, they, along with another man named Leroy Chavez, were in a truck when they noticed her riding her bike. This seems very consistent so far with one of the vehicles mentioned and all of the men hanging out of it.
While trying to get her attention, they accidentally struck her with the truck, and in a panic, they had abducted her. They then took her to a gravel pit and raped her.
Tara had threatened to go to the police, which led to her being stabbed. While Silva, Chavez, and the third man held her down, she had succumbed to her injuries and passed away. Originally, they hid her body in a nearby bush. Then they moved her body to their basement as searches for her started to heat up.
Henry told investigators while on his deathbed that they threatened to kill him if he went to the authorities. He also said that they got away with the crime because Romero's father, Lawrence Romero Sr., was the sheriff at the time of her disappearance. He and the other men's parents also allegedly helped cover up the crime.
He said he found a note written by Romero Jr. confessing to Tara's murder and then destroyed it. Henry also told the investigation team that he believed the man later placed Tara's body in a pond near one of their houses and that they disposed of her body at a junkyard. Another man also came forward and told police that one of the suspects had confessed to him as well.
Romero Jr. later had committed suicide in 1991, despite the testimony of the witness. Since Tara's body has never been found, no charges have been filed against the other suspects. That's frustrating, but I also remember hearing in another case that sometimes a suicide is a confession.
In September of 2021, the Valencia County Sheriff's Office and the New Mexico State Police issued a statement that they had a new lead in the case and that the focus of a sealed warrant for an unknown private residence located within the Valencia County has been issued. However, no further details were provided.
Unfortunately, Tara's dad, David Calico, passed in 2002, and Patty Dole passed away in May of 2006 without any answers or closure as to what happened to Tara. Tara's sister, Michelle Dole, and her stepfather, John, have continued on the search for answers.
It's been presumed by a judge in 1998 that she had been murdered, and the case had been labeled a homicide. Tara's mom passed away, but it has been said that there are new leads in the case. This is where we have our discussion.
All right, JT, so you listened to our research and whatnot about Tara Calico.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions for you because I just want to have a discussion about this. And prior to my first question, I just recently realized, thanks to Jackie from, Cause of Death, she told me, and I didn't know this. I don't know how I didn't know this, but Eric from True Consequences actually covered this too. So I went ahead and added that episode to this episode as well. And you know Eric, so. But with that, like,
I love him.
He scares me. Like,
no, my God, he's a pussycat. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Wow, wow, wow. No, he's intimidating. I think he's just really intimidating because he really is such a great person. Like, he really is. He and Sarah Turney both are like, they really set the standard for, you know, being very victim centric. And that's what it's all about. But, you know, kind of knowing all of that and knowing everything that, you know, Amanda and I were talking about with Tara Calico. My question for you is, you know, how does this case make you feel?
Oh, I wrote 3 words here: sad, pissed off, and helpless.
Yeah.
I think that pretty much covers the gamut of emotions,
Right.
That you can feel during this case. But yeah, and I mean, I think as we progress in this conversation, you'll see what made me sad, pissed off, and hopeless.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I understand that completely. And then Amanda, you had a question?
Yeah. So what's the first thing that comes to your mind after hearing us cover this?
You know, it's really kind of hard to believe that they freaking got away with this without help.
Yeah.
But, which we'll get into, but really it just kind of shows me just how one small thing or one small relationship or somebody was in the office feeling bad that day can turn a case to not being solved. I mean, I think generally in that area that it happened, I think it's considered solved, just unresolved.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, but again, we'll talk about that. But that's kind of like, that's what comes up, you know.
You know, it just, it makes me, if you guys are wanting to know how it makes me feel personally, you know, and I want to hear this from Amanda as well. You know, I'm a mom, you know, and Amanda's a mom. And as we know in this case, like her parents, I think both of her parents passed away. I would be really devastated if, whether I was still alive or even not, knowing that this has not been solved. And, you know, then if I were to pass without closure, I mean, what the fuck am I here for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is kind of one of those things where it's kind of like the proof and where she very well may be and what is happening to her is it's just, or what has happened to her rather. It's right there. It's right fucking there. But people are just choosing to overlook it. You know, that's, and it's infuriating to me.
Honestly, it was more
what
of
about you, Amanda?
I think because I am a mom, I kind of go the same way as you, as I put myself into her mother's shoes. I mean, and as we've heard, her mom usually rode with her. And she didn't. I mean, I couldn't imagine the guilt, even though she has nothing to feel guilty about. I feel like as a mom, I would just feel so guilty. Like, why didn't I go ride with her? If I rode with her, would have been different, you know? And for her mom to have to die with no closure, and she spent her entire rest of her life looking for her daughter. I mean, what kind of life is that? It's not fair.
It's not fair. And I mean, that kind of guilt and or sadness and or just unanswered questions, I mean, that can take a huge toll on health, life, mentality. And so, you know, a lot of these kind of things, they really do impact you in the long run. And the fact that just her sister and her stepfather are the last ones searching or trying to get answers, because I think they probably have one answer that they're thinking about, but you know, a lot harder to prove.
I feel like as we continue on with this discussion that we're all going to pretty much be on the same page. It's just I think really insane how things like this just get overlooked. So with that, my next question. So a search warrant relevant to this case was executed in a home in Valencia County, but, you know, nothing came of that.
Was it?
Right.
I mean, it sounds like at a certain point they were like, okay, let's give them something, but let's not go all the way through in terms of completing everything.
Right.
So it almost feels like it was just paperwork to quiet things down before they, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the same thing I was thinking was, it wasn't a search warrant. It was a let's just shut them up so they would leave us alone warrant. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's believed that she was picked up by men in several vehicles. Where does your mind go with that? Like, the amount of vehicles in this case stands out.
I did look up images of a 1954 Ford truck and also a 1954 Ford car. And if you know the difference, it's different. But if you don't, also it could be either or, because the designs were pretty similar, But my personal thought is that it was one car with multiple people in it, and more than two, and that the public's just getting confused. I mean, you're asking somebody to remember something so far back, and not only that, but it was in the late 80s, and the vehicle was claimed to be a 54, which is kind of hard just to toss off the dome.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that makes it a little confusing with the many stories, but overall, I think it more supports a single car with 4 people.
I think it's kind of crazy that you had mentioned that it was the 80s, and yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of like a hindsight situation where, like, if we'd known then what we know now in 2022,
I'd set the world on fire in the 80s. Yes.
That, or, like, that's always an
I know
option.
exactly what you meant.
It's just like, we didn't have internet or ways to just like go research as easily and readily as we do now. Mm-hmm. I think I mentioned in the episode at some point where it's not out of the realm of possibility where people can confuse a car or a truck. Like, it just depends on how grainy a photo is or whatnot.
That's for sure. I mean, but also, like, we'd be having a whole 10-day conversation on the news about satellites and how you triangulate somebody, because hopefully, I mean, she probably would have had a phone. You probably could track it to the last place or around the last place it was.
Yep.
And, also that makes it a little easier in terms of contacting somebody to say, hey, I'm in the wrong place. But it's hard when you're not in constant contact anymore. But the thought of going for a bike ride down Route 45, I think it was, for a long period of time without any phone, anything is, I mean, fine back then, I guess, but
just the whole thing is just insane to me. And a lot of people have covered this case because nobody has any answers, which we all really do kind of have the answer, don't we? We do. You just can't prove it. Yeah.
And
sad.
You won't be able to, because anything that is found is buried. I mean, and so, like, there's a real big power dynamic here, and you don't want to make it. There's a bigger context and environment than just that one situation. But it's definitely frustrating that there is no motion on this,
right?
Because people who are trying to figure it out are the people who are trying to say, maybe not. Maybe. Well,
I just can't help but think, like, and I hate to bring her name up because, there's a lot of argument about how we need to be worrying about others, but it is an example. If people had been continuing on with the case such as Tara Calico, then maybe we get a result much like what happened with Gabby Petito. A lot quicker. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, I mean, I just think that people need to be placing a lot more importance on every missing person's case than just, one or two. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And then another thing, I mean, and I'd mentioned Jackie from Cause of Death earlier, and I was telling her about this because she was kind of taking a look at the timeline just so, for something that's happening in the future. And she had mentioned that it's just sad because a lot of people in New Mexico especially have an idea of what happened. The unfortunate thing is New Mexico is, and this is what she said, it's a very beautiful place, but also very dangerous because you could literally, hide a body in the desert and nobody would ever find it,
Yeah, it's like, it's more than a plot line, right? it's more than a scene from Breaking Bad. It's a reality. So
It is.
So, and do you think that this was a cover up? And if so, or if not, why or why not?
Yeah, I do. I wasn't quite sure where I was, because I read the questions before I, listened/read, because I did both. But I do. I think the people who talked about it being a cover up were kind of like at their end. So why lie? Unless it's just to screw people over. But that's a very specific case to do so.
Right.
But there was every reason to.
Amanda, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that one.
See, I always go back and forth. I really do go back and forth. I don't know. My gut, I go with yes.
Yeah.
But it's just like, is it?
I absolutely think it was. I
want to say yes, because that's just what my gut tells me. Just listening to other podcasts covering it, my gut says yes. So I'm going to go with yes.
Yeah, I think it was because, again, some of these, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, oh my gosh, word, Courtney, is that...
You got this.
is that I believe that they were related to people of power, right? And so it's like, oh shit, we got caught doing something to this poor woman that we shouldn't have been doing. Well, I doubt they were thinking this poor woman. I just think they got caught doing something that they shouldn't have been doing, freaked out and panicked, possibly murdered her. The hope is that, they hadn't, but at this point, it's very likely that they have. And then they're like, oh no, I need to go to daddy law and protect my ass. That's where I'm going. So.
Yeah, I think it said that his dad was a sheriff.
Yeah.
You don't want to have your son be a murderer, so you want to get voted back in office.
Exactly.
It's always that. Always that.
Plus, I had a question about this. I don't know when the sheriff, the guy who, possibly was the connection, was in office, and when they left. I'd be interested if when they left was when we started hearing more about the case from people.
That's a great question, actually.
Because once he's gone, there's no blackmail, there's no intimidation, he's gone. So if you're not thinking about it, there's probably nobody else in the department that is working on this. So is that when we started hearing more, and that's why they held on to that stuff for so long?
JG, that's a really good question. I never would have thought of that. We'll have to circle back to that one.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that would require a lot more digging, but that is a very excellent question.
Does the picture look to be like Tara to you, and why?
It's really hard, because then this episode all of a sudden becomes like making a murderer.
Oh.
Because it's just did it not, did it, I don't know. Or the staircase.
Right.
Oh.
But the way that I'm seeing this picture, and I zoomed it in on my iPad, like everybody has probably, and I drew a line to where I think the actual, for instance, they're talking about the nation at the eye level, right?
Yeah.
And the one being above the eye level. I actually think it's at the same. It's weird. It's weird too, because honestly,
the angle of her head is different too.
Then again, we're also looking at somebody has duct tape on their mouth, and then also a glamour shot I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the picture, and the more I look at the picture, the more I'm like, am I just seeing what I want to see? Right.
Yeah.
And so of course my brain said, I need to find this out, because I know that there's something that is, you see what you want to see, even after a period of time, whatever that might be. And it's actually called motivated perception. I don't know if you heard of this or not, but it's considered biased, selective, and malleable. So obviously somebody wants that to be Tara, because that's proof of life, right? And that makes sense. That's human. I would do the same thing. But of course you're biased, and of course you're selective, because you want it to be that person. And malleable, the longer you live with and see stuff. And I think we kind of saw that here. So there were so many people that did these analyzing the photo and stuff like that. And at first I was like, yeah, Scotland Yard, I'm good with them. So, maybe they're right. But the more I wonder, is that just what we want to see? I don't know, not to knock on your answers.
So this is why this question would be very interesting to me. I actually took a look at the picture and the picture of the young woman that was compared, and I will have to say that I do not see a similarity. I think the only similarity that I see is that they just both so happen to be white women. I feel like the eyebrow structure is very different. I felt like the nose was very different. And I hate having to say that because it does not offer any help or any closure. But at the same time, in a sense, it may, but it also kind of really speaks to the fact that you and I see two different things, as does Scotland Yard. And, I believe it was the FBI that was also doing the comparison, And it also speaks to the one that I forgot the term already, but you were talking about like the perception.
Yeah, motivated perception. Yeah.
Yeah, it speaks to that also. I think that some people really do want it to be Tara to feel like, she very well could still be alive, but realistically, unfortunately, I do not think it is her.
No, I mean, after I walked you through like my thought process without actually explaining that was my thought process, because eventually I got to motivated perception, and that's when I flipped my thought. It's really hard to make the comparison here. Like the other photos, I don't even know. I mean, by the time that they were pulling photos under white vans, which by the way, that Toyota van I looked up is creepy AF.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's the one your parents warned you about, that's for sure. At that point, 10 months later, years later, it's really hard to hard to justify that actually being anybody. And if the story that we think is a cover-up is true, neither of those photos were actually that person. Right. And I kind of my IMO that kind of the stories that we eventually will probably get to. I mean, that's kind of where my head goes. So
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, I would love for it to be that. At the same time, I also know it's 2 decades, plus after this happened. And so, I just try to be realistic, probably maybe too realistic.
Right. It's okay though. So. I mean, here's the thing about that though, is like, we try to look at it without bias. We're just giving what we see, and sometimes it's very helpful. Like if somebody's looking from like on the outside looking in to a situation, and that's why that question is really important, is because it kind of proves a point in a way. But with that, I am curious to think. Oh my gosh, I am curious, Amanda. What's your answer on that one?
I don't think it's her. I don't. You don't? I mean, whenever I quickly looked at it, I could see the resemblance. Yeah, I could see it. But just going for a very long time, back and forth between the two pictures of her, like her school picture and the picture of her in the dress in the bathroom. And like, really, I'm looking at those two photos. Yeah. And I was not really looking more at the glamour shot, but I was looking at the two like kind of candid photos and then going back to the Polaroid that was found.
The hard part about this is that when I scroll up to the Polaroid of the kind of zoomed out version with the boy, I cannot remember his name, but that's heartbreaking too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just thought about my son.
Yeah.
That's all I have to do at this point. And I'm a puddle anyways in real life, so it's fine. But the color gradient's different. The hue, the saturation is different. It's like they turned up the saturation, which makes her look more tan, which is really hard to compare these things because you are looking at whatever JCPenney's was, a professional, professionally lit glamour shot of sorts, right? Not to say it's not a good photo. It's a very good, frontal
80s photo.
Well, there was a lot of hairspray. That's why we got the ozone we have. No, not really. But yeah, I mean, it's hard because they totally changed the saturation here, which makes her look way tanner than what it is above. But I still, I agree. Ultimately, I went on a roller coaster with this. I think we all go on a roller coaster with this, right?
We do.
I
It's like
wonder-
you
It's
want
fine.
it to be her, but then why do we want it to be her?
I mean,
Because
at this
now
point,
it's
Yeah.
so many
Right.
years later. It's like, hopefully she went fast and she wasn't tortured like this.
yeah, but
I
I mean,
mean,
like, and the
don't
other
know.
thing is, right, the book.
Yes.
The book was mentioned, and I get it. I see the book here. I see that
Yeah.
they know what it is. First off, why was a book provided?
Right.
Yeah, that
But
made no
also,
sense.
why is the book there and her hands are behind her back?
Yeah.
So what's she doing with the book? Somebody's not reading it to them. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
So that
Why
kind
is
of
it there?
that actually kind of offshoots into a whole new theory, though, if you think about it. What if she had been, abducted on purpose by somebody that knew her and placed that book there as an Easter egg?
Because it was her favorite
Yeah.
You know what I
author.
mean?
But also at the same
Yeah.
time, that was a very big book and a very big author during that time.
Yeah.
So
Very-
it's
very
than
true.
anybody really. I mean,
yeah.
you see somebody be like, hey, let's see who bought that book when, and the chances are probably a lot of friggin'
A
people
lot of
bought
people.
that book then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
Yeah.
if there was anything, there was so much about her in terms of her victimology, because I was writing down some of the stuff that she kind of fell under, right? I'm so happy truly that she lived a hell of a life
Yeah.
before this happened, because
Yeah.
she was dependable, she was goal oriented, she was in school, not just freshman year, sophomore year, which means she decided to progress on, and she did good enough to do so,
Right.
which tells me she wants to keep going. But she's also close to family, and she let people know where she was going as much as she could.
Yep.
Which is huge. I mean, and everybody should know that. I mean, definitely let somebody know.
Oh yeah.
When my wife went down to meet me for the first time in North Carolina, she literally let everybody know where my address was and where she was going, and
Good.
I took no offense to that, because obviously, right?
Yeah.
But it's if you could do everything right, she did it.
Yeah.
She did.
I think what was probably so frustrating to her mom, and I want to put thoughts in her mom's head. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and that's okay. But what would be frustrating to me, let me phrase it that way, is that same day I went looking, that same day I didn't find her, and that same day I contacted the police, and there still was an issue.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
not every case gets solved, but that's a real quick amount of time, and I'm surprised in the late 80s, they didn't say we got to wait 24 hours.
Yeah.
True.
That is
So
very
on top
true.
of that,
Ooh, I've been dying to try this place.
Oh my god, me too. I've heard such good things about it.
Welcome to the Crime Diner. I'm Cindy. I'll be cooking for you this evening. Here are your menus.
Ooh, what are you thinking about getting?
I don't know, murder with a side of cannibalism? What about you?
Ooh, that sounds good. I'm torn between historical mayhem and the social injustice, maybe?
Oh.
I just want to let you know that each episode comes with dinner, dessert, and a specialty drink chosen by yours truly.
Wine Dine and Storytime has had a makeover, and we invite you to slide into the booth with us at the Crime Diner, where each week we will discuss a crime over dinner, drinks, and dessert. See you there!
do you want me to talk about the judge thing
Yes.
or the sheriff thing?
So
Okay.
real quick, we had to cut down just a bit just because my internet sucks, and as all of our listeners know, like I have crappy internet. But so we had to cut down for a little bit. But while we were coming back onto Zoom, JT found some information. So JT, why don't you go ahead and
I don't like to make like statements without trying to back them up eventually. So I figured
Right.
since we were down, I'd look up the retirement / death of Lawrence Romero, who was the sheriff.
right.
Which, by the way, His funeral page, where people leave comments, is something else.
I imagine.
I bet.
Anyway,
Yeah.
So the first thing I looked up was when he died. It was 2017, which doesn't answer my question really. And I wasn't just looking to prove the idea that after he died or whatever, people started talking, but he did retire in 2009. And so that was 3 years before I think the deathbed confession was. So at a certain point, at 2009, at a certain point, once he was gone, and probably some of his people were gone, I would imagine, because he's not old, but he was up there.
Yeah.
And it seems like after he retired, he died not long after, 3 years, which is not a ton of time. Things started being said or found out, or a search warrant was issued, but never really came of anything,
So did it say? I didn't look too hard into his death, but did it say how he died? Real quick.
I couldn't find anything specific. It's really hard because I had to wade through the muck and the mire of the news,
Right.
And every single blog, whatever that did it. So
I just find that part interesting though, because he died 3 years after he retired, right? So
yeah.
Recently, Amanda and I revisited Tony Costa, which, if you don't know, Tony Costa is one of those serial killers that I am the most, and I hate the word, but intrigued by, because there's not a lot of video footage of him. There's not a lot of there's no interview recording that I can find. Nothing. I can just find a little bit here and there, and that's what makes it all the more curious to me.
Yeah.
But in that case, his mom, while they were trying to figure a lot more out about him when they were just catching him, his mom, all of a sudden just passed from a cerebral hemorrhage. And my whole theory on that one is that she was under so much stress from knowing a lot more than she was letting on, that she stroked out and died. And I feel like something similar might have happened in this case.
I mean, the concept is, stress destroys you. We see that personally, I think, where we work day jobs and we're up all night doing other jobs. Right?
Yeah.
But
but I'm saying there's so much guilt there that it's stressing them out, that they're like, they're holding on to all of that, and they unfortunately die with that information.
Well, and that's the crux of the plot of Crime and Punishment, which is one of my favorite books. And it's so fucking long, but that's the point, is the destructive nature of guilt. And it's true. They were writing about it in the 1700s. They're writing about it now. We just happen to have more science to back it up. So,
man, that's fucking, all of this is just fucking crazy. So, okay, so I have a question. So how do you feel about Miranda Esquivel coming forward as a classmate, knowing what may have happened? She came forward so many fucking years later. And what's your feelings on, and this isn't to say anything against her, okay? Because absolutely nothing against her. I'm just saying in general, what's your feelings on people coming forward with things later on as opposed to right away? And I just want to stress the importance for anybody listening to, if you see something, say something. But what's your feelings on all of that?
It's really hard to put yourself in the context of then versus years later, right? And especially for that person, that friend.
Yeah.
I guess she had set forth to do a documentary, but she actually ended up doing a podcast for sure about this. And to me, there's two ways you can go. One, she was nervous, because that's a reality. But two, she also knew about the sheriff, and finally she started talking about it after she was able to. This is the question where, I wanted to know when Senior died or when he was off the police force, and we figured that out. And for people in general, right, that's kind of talking about that specific situation in general, who take time, there's just so much, in the brain, I'd say 9 times out of 10, it's not nefarious. It isn't. It's not villainous. It's something that has been boiling, and they haven't really known what to do with it. And I can't imagine what I would do in that situation, right? So, because I've never been put in it, so I have no I have no experience to back anything up that I would say I would do.
Right. There's a lot of instances where people are like, for instance, and JT, you know a little bit more about this one, but there are rape victims that won't come forward till much, much, much later. And that's why I'm saying, that I'm not giving any blame towards this young lady. She in a sense, if she knew a lot more, she in a sense is a victim just as much, but was afraid to say something.
Yeah.
But I do want to stress the importance of, I understand if you know something, you don't want to say something because you're terrified or you're stressed. But if you can, realize that it is very important that if you see something, to please say something, because you could be saving somebody else.
Absolutely. That's actually the last thing that's almost the last thing I say on the end of every active shooter episode. It's really important. And, it really kind of speaks to, you had mentioned rape victims, and how they still to this day do not feel comfortable coming forward, at least either until the time permits, or there's a group that have come forward. And so it's obviously easier to come forward when there is a group of people. You're not the target. But I think it speaks in that vein, it speaks to the culture of law enforcement. And that's not to say everybody in law enforcement is bad. I don't want to say that, because that's not true. I've got family members that are in law enforcement on all sides. But what it does say is when somebody knows something and they're not feeling comfortable to say anything about it. Yeah. I think that says a lot. But what I also think we need to do is let that propel us forward. And anybody listening, let it propel you forward so that you can say, I know something, and since we have the internet and everything, what happens after you say something. Sometimes, it goes backwards. But the idea is to know that and to be able to prepare for that and then say something, right?
Right.
Yep.
Amanda, what are your thoughts on that?
I say you say something unless there's a really good reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand some people have reasons sometimes where they can't say anything, and that's something that they have to live with it for the rest of their lives. It's not like they're getting off scot-free. They're living with that guilt every day of not being able to say something. Personally, I would say something.
Yeah. Yeah, we can all, like, till the day we die, be like there's been situations where, we look at certain crimes and we're like, why didn't so-and-so do this and this and this? But then, we're really not in their shoes, are we? You know what I mean? Like we could be like, at the end of the, like, I will tell people till the day, till I'm blue in the face. Oh, I hope nobody ever tries that shit with my kid. But I don't know what I'm actually going to do in that situation. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we can't expect everybody to be the same way. You know what I mean?
Well, and I'll tell you this, like, I don't know what I would do in that situation, but I was at the gas station filling up my car the other day, and I saw a dude just come to the side of the kiosk, open the refrigerator, take out an Arctic Frost Gatorade, close it back up, and just walk away. And did I say anything? Nope.
Right.
I sure didn't, because my brain said, oh, they've got cameras, or, oh, maybe he really needed it, or, whatever.
Right. So, exactly.
I didn't even say anything about that. But then again, it could just be my, fuck the man. You get that Arctic Frost, sir.
Oh, yeah. Most of the time, I'm like, snitches get stitches. But if
there's tattling. Like, I used to teach, and what I used to say was, unless somebody is going to get hurt or hurt them, or if they're going to hurt somebody or hurt themselves, that is when you tattle.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than that, I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, so there's a difference between, like, snitching somebody out because they wore orange on a yellow day.
You wear pink on Wednesdays.
It's like, come on now. But it's like, come on now, don't do that. But then you go and say something if you know that your friend has been one of the serial rape victims of Adrian Vidal, whatever the fuck his last name is today.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, that's a little bit different. You know what I mean?
You say something because somebody is in danger. Somebody's in danger, you say something.
Listen, the conclusion of this question and the answers we've had is listen to your teachers.
Exactly.
Listen to your teachers. Yeah. Unless they tell you to do something you don't want to do. That's not good. Yeah, don't listen to those teachers.
You know what's really sad is that we even have to say that.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, in 2022, listen to most teachers. But if you get a weird feeling about one of them,
If they
and
have
tell
a
your mom.
mustache,
they have a mustache and a white van.
a 1989 white Ford.
Yeah, maybe not that teacher, you know?
No.
And if
Not
they're
that one.
saying that there's candy back there, there's probably not the candy that you're thinking of.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Exactly. In 2022, though, most of the time, listen to, whatever, but if it's somebody that gives you a really strange feeling, then trust your gut.
Absolutely.
I swear to God, this will be the last.
No, you're good.
Last
You're
sidebar.
good.
I wonder if like our kids, well, my kids, anyways, at least. I wonder if they're going to grow up being more cautious because there were 2.5 to 3 to 5 to whatever until people figure this shit out and figure out how to behave. I wonder if they're growing up in that specific time during formative years is going to make them more wary of people. And I'm wondering if that's going to create an increase in reports or an increase in just being careful, which means a decrease. I wonder.
I think it will.
I
think it will because true crime has blown up.
Yeah.
And people are becoming more aware. And I honestly think true crime documentaries, podcasts, they are helping.
Yeah.
Because
when they're done right?
Absolutely. They have to be done right.
And I don't mean technically right? I mean like the content when it's in the presentation, when it's done right.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. So next question is, so several news stories, magazine articles, and podcasts have covered this case. So why do you feel like this is important?
The case or the covering?
The coverage.
I mean, always more eyes mean more stories.
Kind of what we were just saying.
Yeah. And it is what we were just saying. I mean, I think that it worries me to the degree that things are covered, because then how many times do we hear in a documentary that information was given out, they asked for tips, and they got thousands?
Yeah.
And that's not to say that they're not important, because they are. Just like anytime something's covered, a case is covered, that's very important, especially as long as it's done correctly. But I also think that, especially now, not to be like, get off my lawn, but like for real, like the amount of coverage that some cases get, number one, drowns out the other cases.
Yeah.
But also muddies the waters, because now all of a sudden you got people being like, oh yeah, I thought I saw, you know what I mean? So like, that's why detectives and investigators have to keep back evidence, because if they don't, it's just like, so it's great. I think it's great. I think it's great when it's done well. I would just rather I'd rather have 5 to 10 cover it and it be widely circulated than to all of a sudden have thousands cover it.
Yeah.
But also I do understand, as a family member, if I was in that position, I'd want as many people to cover it as possible.
I would want as many people to cover it as possible, as long as it was respectful. But with that being said, you had said, and I agree, I absolutely 100% agree. I think sometimes it's good for, like a true crime documentary or podcast to cover an older case that's well known, if it's done correctly. I think there are some that are way too saturated, though, like Charles Manson, Ted Bundy. I think that those tend to, it's kind of like you're kind of beating a dead horse, as it were.
I hate to call it this, because it's not this case. Because like, I'm very passionate about, like, I'm not passionate about Charles Manson, but I really like studying his psychology and his story.
Yeah.
But it's clickbait at a certain point, right? I mean, that's what it is. So like, I definitely always try to make sure that we're finding different stuff.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay to cover certain things like this, as long as it is relevant to certain situations. Now, Amanda and I recently covered BTK. That one arguably has been covered to death. But
sure.
But at the same time, it kind of reinforces the whole theory that a sex offender could look like you or me. You can't sit there and put a specific look or whatever on that, person.
Right.
It also helps make people more aware that things like this, it's happened and it could very well happen again. But it's also important that we give the attention to cases such as Tara Calico, because to this day she still hasn't been found, and I think that there is a slight chance that she could eventually be found if we all just kind of keep our awareness on it. That's my soapbox.
I wonder if records kept then were kept like they are now. And really, at a certain point, there's kind of no hiding unless you really create, a distraction, or you delete or erase or, burn everything. But I wonder if a case like this could go, as far as it has today.
Yeah.
Because at some point, a text or a message would be sent saying, "Hey, help them out, or cover this up, or whatever." Obviously, not literally, but something to that degree.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it'd be a lot harder nowadays for this to happen, which is great.
It's true. I mean, even if it's accidentally, great, because GPS and all that stuff. But it's great one way or another.
Well, everybody also this day and age, everybody's damn nosy anyway. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. So
I know it's a comment about my nose. I know it's sizable, but
no. Nobody's saying anything about anybody's schnoz.
I called myself out. It's fine.
All right. Do we have any more questions or anything like that?
I don't think so.
No.
This
has been an amazing conversation. I'm very, very impressed. So, wow. Thanks, JT.
You spend your life reading my quips and my stupid puns and my crappy jokes. I can be serious, damn it.
No. Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a better guest. So thank you. We've had some good guests. Honestly, everybody's been great. So, all right, Amanda, do you have an ending quote for us?
I do.
Okay.
All right. It's short and sweet this week.
Okay.
Life would be tragic if it weren't funny.
Dude, this is Sepultura. Hands down, Sepultura.
Sepultura. That's literally my life. It's like me.
It's
Sepultura, right?
Nope. Guess again.
Fear Factory?
Not Fear Factory.
Green Day.
Yes, the entire band said this at the same time.
One Republic.
When you say Green Bay or Green Day?
Either
one.
Because Green Bay's a city, but Green Day's a band.
It's cheesy.
How about, is it Green Day when they performed in Green Bay?
No.
Did that ever happen? Okay. Mac Miller.
Right.
Okay, no.
No, it's Steven Mac Miller.
I don't even know who that is.
She said, okay. Focus, Fox.
Told you, teacher.
Yeah.
All right. No, it was Stephen Hawking.
I was so fucking close.
Damn it. And that guy could literally be hysterical. If you've ever seen a sketch with him, he's on Monty Python sketches and shit with them. He's funny.
Dude, he
was funny in Big Bang Theory.
He could have torn up a concert as a Sepultura member. Why not?
Well, he's dead now, but
I think he was a member of Kiss at one point.
Wow. So, real quick before we sign off here, Amanda and I do have a Patreon, and we are both poor, especially me. So please join our Patreon. We've got some bonus content on there, especially that one where we had a lot of fuck ups. What did we call that? A blooper reel? Yeah,
we just have a blooper on there. Blooper reel.
Yeah, it was so fun. We have some videos. You get some content early and yada yada yada. We're also going to be at the Dallas True Crime Podcast Festival at the end of August. So, and we won the podcast thing. Apparently, we're supposed to tell you all that.
Yay!
So that's cool. Anyways, that's all we've got. We have reviews, but I'm not going to even bother reading them this time because JT is our review. So that's awesome. So
you guys are awesome. I appreciate you having me. It's
Thank you.
a lot of fun. I really want people to know, and I know we only have a few minutes left, but I want people to know that indie podcasters in general, unless you're Joe Rogan, you don't make shit. You don't at all. And so like supporting people, especially indie podcasters, through Patreon, through merch sales, through whatever, which you guys have awesome merch. I love it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh no, so do you. I want you to go in and tell everybody about your merch, by the way. It's so fucking awesome.
We have a Beer Man and Hops shirt. We just came out with it. We had somebody design it, and it looks very Jay and Silent Bob. And it's Mike and me, Mike, my co-host, and I in front of basically a brewery, just like Jay and Silent Bob. And you can get that on anything if you just go to brewcrime.com and you search our store. So
you guys got to check out Brew Crime. It's good shit. And Crime Trials, and Active Shooter, and all the 52 podcasts that JT is part of.
I like to stay busy.
No, JT, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on.
I agree.
Will you do us the honor of, just signing us off real quick?
Oh, hell yeah, I will. I've been waiting to say this all day.
Okay, do it.
Don't be a dick and wear deodorant.
All right. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Stop recording. Thank you for listening to A Nefarious Nightmare. Music used in this podcast was originally from Ghost Stories Incorporated, remixed and made for this podcast by Ryan RCX Murphy. Additional music is by Epidemic Sound. All research depending on the episode is done by Amanda Cronin and Courtney Fenner. Episode scripting, sound design, editing, and episode mastering and release are done by Courtney Fenner. Please leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you very much for listening, and take care.